What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be getting back to work on our big block swap 3rd gen Camaro, and as you guys know, getting this big block down into this 3rd gen has been a decently tight fit. We've been trying to find a readily available kit to mount our alternator, but none of them seem like they're going to work out well for us, so we can't find one. We might as well build one. So let's get through the intro and jump right into today's video. Alright guys, let's go ahead and take a look at the alternator we're going to be using and the placement that we've came up with. So this is just an old GM 3-wire alternator that we're going to be trying to use on our big block here. So we had this from a small block sitting out in the trailer. I think it works, but even if it doesn't, it's a pretty standard GM alternator. So worst case scenario, we can build everything we need and then just pick up a new one of these. But like I said, we're trying to figure out where we want to place this thing. So we wanted to go somewhere kind of easy to get to, easy to wire. So we've got our battery over here. And as you guys can see, we don't have a whole lot of room over here on the driver's side regardless, because we've got the factory steering box at the moment still. And then we've got all of our brake stuff. We've got headers, tall valve covers, all kinds of stuff in our way over on this side. Now the only spot that I did think we could fit it would be down in here, but the problem with that is going to be adjustment. So I can get it in here if I really kind of wrestle with it. But as you can see, it's pretty tight, so I think we're going to chalk that idea up. Then we could go somewhere up like this, but the problem with that is we currently have a short water pump on this engine, and then we have this flush mount lower crank pulley. So I don't really want to buy a whole bunch of new pulleys if we can help it. So we're going to try to utilize this short water pump because eventually we'll probably go electric anyways. So I'm mainly just worried about getting a belt ran for the alternator that will also work for the water pump at the time being. So like I said, up here is kind of out of the question because we'd have to space all of our pulleys way out or get all new pulleys. And then same thing, if we come over here, we'd have the same exact issue. So the only spot that I've really found that it fits pretty decently would be down in here. Kind of like so. I think we'd be able to get our spacing right, get this thing lined up where it needs to be, and still have room to adjust it by rolling it. So we hopped online, we started looking for some brackets, and the problem is we can't seem to find any brackets that are going to put this alternator lower on the passenger side that's also going to line up with this short water pump. So that's where we come into building our own, and I think that's exactly what we're going to have to do here. So I'm really liking this low mount position, but like I said, I can't seem to find a simple bolt-on bracket that's going to work for us. So that leads us to where we are right now. We're going to end up trying to make our own bracket. We can space it out however we need it to, but I think it's going to work and get this thing right where we need it so that we can run a belt. So like I said, guys, our game plan here is to get this alternator somewhere down in here where this pulley can line up with this pulley. So we can actually probably end up with it somewhere out around like that. So to do that, we're going to have to make a bracket off of here that can come over, hold the alternator on the bottom hopefully, and then we'll put some sort of adjuster up top or a slotted bar that this can slide on so that we can tighten and loosen the belt. But now that we know about where we want to get this, we can make our template out of cardboard real quick. Perfect, gives us a good base to start with, and now we can start shaping it, trimming it, putting holes in it for where we need to mount this thing up and get ready to make it out of metal. And now that we've made our template out of cardboard, we can come in here, see about where it's gonna have to go. It's gonna go down in there, but what's gonna make this easier for us is taking this water pump off. We don't currently have gaskets on it yet, so I'm just gonna go ahead, back those bolts off. We'll pull the water pump off, and then we can start using our piece of cardboard here to make some sort of bracket that can come down, hold this on the bottom like I said, and then we can start trimming everything we don't need away. So as you guys can see, now we can get in here, much easier to start tracing this out and see how we want to go about making this thing. So I think I'm gonna go something kind of like that. And then we want to make sure we leave plenty of meat on these bolt holes up here, because we're probably going to have to use some sort of spacer to move this in or out. And then we'll notch it down here in the lower corner so we can go down with it a little bit more. Something like that. And I might have to cut a new one out of cardboard to give us a little bit more height here so that we can actually come more down like so. And then shave this into shape for what we want after. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do is just go through here. I've got a little mechanical pencil, and I'm just gonna start marking where I can take some material off. And then of course, we're gonna find the center of the alternator and then do like a rounded edge here so that it can kind of get tucked into there. Keep in mind, our bracket isn't gonna come to the top of the alternator because we're not gonna slot it. We're gonna use a separate adjuster. So most of this is gonna come off. We're just gonna go ahead, mark for our holes. I'm gonna notch it a little bit here and there until we get this thing in the shape that we're looking for, and then go from there. So what we're gonna do here is take our alternator, I'm gonna flip it over, we're gonna measure, coming up with just about 5.5 inches. Then we can measure from the center to the edge, coming up with just about 2 3/4. Now we can take our little tool here. Forget what these are called. I don't know if it's called a compass or a protractor. I don't know, I was never good at that stuff. But if you guys don't have this kit, definitely recommend picking it up on Amazon. A bunch of super handy stuff in here, and it's relatively cheap. So I'll put a link to that in the description down below. But now we can take our tape measure, and I'm gonna set this up for just about 2 3/4, which we're right about there. Maybe I'll knock it down just a smidge. Right about there. We marked this about center of where that alternator was. Now we can just come over here and trace it out. Boom. Now we've got a mark. As you can see, I already marked it a little shorter than I wanted, so we went ahead and bumped that out a little bit. But now we can go ahead, cut along that line. A bunch of this will probably end up coming off after, probably down in here somewhere. But for now, we're just gonna leave that, bring it over there, see if we're anywhere close, and go from there. Bang, that actually came out really good, way better than I thought. That little slow slice with the razor blade actually worked way, way better than I thought. So let's hold it up to our alternator, see if we're even close or if we need to go a little more. It's actually really close. We could have gone a little more, I guess. Let's go ahead and put our piece back in there for a second. I'm gonna open this up a little more. All right, do the same thing, we'll strip this out. As you guys see, we went ahead, trimmed this out. It actually looks like it's fitting pretty good. I'm just gonna go ahead and lop these ears off real quick so it goes on and off the alternator better, and then we can notch it out more wherever we need to. So let's just go ahead, make a quick line. Like I said, a bunch of this is going to come off later anyways. I'm just trying to leave as much meat as we can so when we go to make the bracket. So as you guys can see now, that is actually much, much better. So like I said, we're not going to need it to go up to this bolt hole, but if you were going to do it with it slotted, you could do exactly this, what I have right here, and then just slot this upper hole so it can rotate on it. But we're not going to do that. I think we're going to just use an adjuster, because it'd be easier for us. But let's go ahead, bring this over to the car, mock it up some more, and go from there. All right, guys, so me from the future real quick. I lost a couple clips between filming and editing, and most of them were to do with our cardboard template. So I just wanted to take a second and show you guys a couple tricks on how to locate some bolt holes for when you're making your template. So we have a scrap piece of cardboard here. I'm gonna show you two different methods that actually both work out pretty well. So for the first one, we're just gonna take and place our piece of cardboard in there. We've got a little hammer, and we're just gonna simply tap it. And then if we take our cardboard and flip it around, you can now see, it probably doesn't come in on camera very well, I'll take a picture of it, but you can clearly see this bolt hole here, and this bolt hole here is a little less outlined, but it is still very outlined. So that's one way to do it, and then I'll show you real quick another way to do it. So that's the first method that we use a lot. There's actually 3 that you can use. If you're using paper or sometimes thin cardboard, you can also get a little bit of grease or dirt on your finger and just rub it all over this side of the paper or cardboard, and you'll get your outline somewhat decently as well. It works really good with paper, not as great with cardboard. And then there is a completely separate method that I use a lot that I actually used for this particular project, and that is taking one of these punches here. We get somewhere located near our bolt hole. Now, I did this before we had all the excess cardboard cut away, and then we simply just find the hole like so. Use a tapered punch so that it kind of centers itself on the bolt hole there. Then we can just kind of pull this back, use that to taper it out a little bit more, open the hole up for us. And then we can take a bolt that will fit that hole. For example, this one right here. Just use that to locate it. Then we take our same punch once again. Just like so. Open it up a little bit. Let me grab a spare bolt. And then boom, you have your 2 bolt holes. Like I said, I did this before we trimmed away all the excess so that we could build our bracket around those 2 bolt holes. So like I said, this is the method that we decided to use, and once you've done it a couple times, you can actually get extremely accurate with it. We didn't even have to oval out any of our bolt holes moving forward. The cardboard ones worked out perfectly. You just want to make sure that you do this before you start shaping your cardboard or cutting away any excess so that you're building your bracket around the bolt hole locations. So I just wanted to throw these tips and tricks in here for you guys since that part got cut out of the video. Now after this, we did decide to trim down our cardboard template and transfer it over to some thin plywood we had laying around just to make it a little bit more rigid and get us a much closer template that we could actually shape and work with before we transferred over to our extremely thick metal to save us a lot of time in the long run. So let's go ahead and get that cut out so we can transfer it over to metal. All right guys, so as you can see, I went ahead and made our cardboard template. This is what it came out looking like. I need to add that little piece back in, but I'm gonna try something new here that I've never tried before. I have this super thin, cheap wood that was over in our scrap pile, and I'm gonna try tracing this out on the wood, cutting it out, and then we can go ahead and shape this so that it's much closer to what we're actually going to need for the metal. Now the cardboard usually works really good as a template, but there's always a little bit of work that needs to be done, and I figure if we go with the wood, I can actually like fine shape it. It'll be more rigid. We can actually line up bolt holes and all of that stuff to be able to go through and trace this over to metal and have less work, because we are going to be using either 1/4 inch or 3/8 steel, which isn't going to be the easiest for us to shape not having a mill. So we're gonna have to do it by hand. So that's the thought process behind this. It is a little bit more work now, but I'm hoping it saves us a little bit of work later. That's what our piece is ultimately going to look like if we cut it out of metal. So what I'm going to do next is pop some holes in it so we can bring it over to the car, test fit it. Then we can round some stuff on the wood to make it easy on ourselves. Then finally trace it out on some metal. So right now I marked all the holes that we need to drill in the metal. I'm going to go ahead and do the same exact process on this piece of wood so that we can get everything bolted up, mock it up, so that we don't cut our big thick pieces of steel and work those for no reason. Now we can drill the hole for the alternator. Me from the future again, guys. I just wanted to show you our wood template that we made, that we transferred over from our cardboard template. It worked out really good, and those little tricks making the bolt holes worked out phenomenal. We didn't even have to oval these out or anything, and honestly, working with this super thin plywood worked out extremely well and saved us a ton of time when it came to making our final metal bracket. And it gave us the ability to full test fit this. We were able to bolt this up to the engine, bolt the alternator to it, carefully of course, and it did hold it in place and help us with final fitment. So just wanted to throw this in here since that part of the video got cut out as well. But the wood template worked out extremely well. Now that we have a nice template to work with, I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing traced out. We'll center punch all the holes, so that's done, and then we can start cutting this thing. Sorry for the background noise, we do have the AC on right now, but I think we are gonna have to use my Milwaukee jigsaw to cut this. Sadly, I don't have a plasma cutter yet. Love to get one, even one of those cheap like Amazon style ones, but right now we're gonna have to use this. Now as you guys can see, this plate is pretty decently heavy and thick. It is 3/8 plate, so not sure how the jigsaw is gonna handle it. We can switch to a die grinder if we have to, but I think I'd much rather use the jigsaw if we can to make a few extra cuts here. So let's go ahead, get this thing traced out, center punched, and get to cutting. I'm just using a little tungsten scribe that I got on Amazon. If I can find the link, I'll link it for you guys. But it does work pretty decent. I like to use these. You can trace it with a Sharpie still so that you can see it better. But I like to use these just in case the Sharpie gets worn off, your line will still be there. Wish it was easy as just scribing this thing out, smacking it on the ground, and it breaks on the line. That'd be cool. Let's center punch it, and then we can get to cutting. There we go. All right, let's get to work. This is gonna be a very slow, long, tedious process, guys. I'm gonna use plenty of Tap Magic as cutting oil, and we're just gonna do the best we can and see what we can do. I'm honestly surprised that it's even cutting it. That is some thick steel, boys. We are so close to getting this thing, guys. There it is. Obviously we still got to round some stuff, clean it up a little bit, but for using a jigsaw on something that thick, it actually worked out way better than I thought it was going to. Would have been nice to have a plasma cutter, but still got the job done. Alright guys, so as you've seen, we've got our 3/8 thick alternator bracket cut out of our plate, and it actually came out really good. This thing is extremely thick. Now I know it's 3/8, but once you start working with it, you realize just how thick this metal is. Now obviously we do still need to get a plasma cutter, but I was very pleasantly surprised with how well the jigsaw worked. Ours overheated a couple times, we had to give it a break, but other than that, it worked pretty well. Biggest thing I noticed is if I had 3 blades in rotation, so I could swap them out so one could cool off while I started using another one. And then of course keeping plenty of Tap Magic on it made a huge difference. So like I said, came out pretty good. We even got this little rounded spot cut out pretty decent with just the jigsaw. Now next thing we're going to do is get our holes drilled. We're going to use a little center drill at our drill press, get those popped in it, and then work our way up to our final size. Then once we make sure everything's going to fit, we can head over to the belt sander and start shaping this thing down, getting it to look nice and pretty. So let's head over to the drill press and get this thing drilled out. Just for the record, you guys should always have your vise either bolted down or clamped down. I have a clamp here just to help keep it from kicking, hopefully, but sometimes it's just difficult to get this thing where you need it, so. Alright, let's clean this thing up, check all of our bolts, and test fit it. So as you guys seen, we got the holes drilled in our new alternator bracket, and I went ahead, slapped it on the car, and this thing is looking pretty sweet. So as you guys can see, it actually fit really well. I didn't have to oval out the holes or anything, so really shocked, but really happy about that. So it looks really good. It's a nice, thick, heavy piece of plate that's gonna support this alternator perfectly. So real quick, what I'm gonna do is just throw the alternator on there, make sure that we're in the ballpark. The only thing I'm worried about is with how thick this plate is, I'm worried that the alternator might actually be out too far and we won't be able to get it where we need it for the belt. Best case scenario, it's still back a little too far and we can use some spacers here or up here to move this thing out a little bit. So let's go ahead, grab the alternator, we'll get it set on there and see how it looks. Heck yeah, guys. So this thing's looking really good, guys. I'm gonna use an adjustment rod, something like this with a heim on either end so that we can tighten and loosen the belt just by spinning this rod. But as far as the bracket goes, it looks really good. I'm gonna need to get 2 different bolts here that are a little shorter so we can get rid of that spacer. We can clean up this bracket. Then I'm also gonna have to get a shorter bolt down here and figure out what we're gonna have to do for spacers to get the belt to line up with this and the water pump. But as of right now, this thing is looking really, really good. So let's take the bracket off, get it cleaned up. Then we can bolt this thing on and start figuring out our spacing. So this belt sander from Harbor Freight actually comes in extremely handy when we're making brackets like this. It's got all different surfaces that you can use for either rounding an edge or making a radius like we did on this inner quarter here. And we were also able to use the flat disc on the side there to true up our straight edges. And that side works really good for rounding corners as well. So as you guys seen, we got the alternator mocked up with our bracket. I went ahead, took a ride down to the hardware store, and we've got some new bolts for where it bolts to the block here. So those are finalized. And then we also picked up a few different spacers to try to get the alignment of the alternator right. And as of right now, I think we have it pretty good. I don't have the right belt for it, but we had this old lawnmower belt that we've got right here. And if we set it on there, see if I can do this one-handed real quick. We set that on there like so. You want to grab that side? And then we pull it tight. From the side, it looks pretty dang straight. Now I'm sure there's a proper way to measure this and figure out exactly where it needs to be. But for what we've got here, that's how we went about doing it. And I think we've got it pretty good. We do still have some spare shims and spacers that we picked up, but I think we've got it pretty decently placed. So as you guys can see, we are using this heim joint bar so that we can tighten and loosen the belt up here. I think that's going to work out fine for us. We are going to have to get one with a slightly bigger end to fit the bolt that goes right here. The next thing that I want to do is get the water pump bolted on. We'll check the belt alignment with that, see what we're going to need to do to space or shim that pulley. Get all of these lined up so we can clean up the bracket, paint it, and put this thing on for the final time. Me from the future again, guys, but imagine my joy when we went to bolt up our alternator to check fitment with our newly made bracket, and everything bolted up beautifully until we decided to test fit our mechanical water pump. As you can see, the outlet on this pump runs directly into the side of the alternator. So I was a little bit PO'd, to say the least, but this just pushed us to order up an electric water pump, which we have been wanting to do since the beginning, but kept talking ourselves out of for budget reasons. So we decided to go ahead and order up a CVF electric water pump, and it'll be here any minute and we can get back to it. So as you can see, we are still waiting on our water pump, so I'm working on getting everything else finalized. The bracket's fitting perfectly, it's ready for paint, and we've got our adjustment rod on here. I just wanted to test fit it. As you guys can see, when it's tight, we could put the belt on, and then we go ahead and technically loosen this rod, which would tighten our belt by swinging our alternator out. Then, of course, we could tighten it back up to bring it back in so that we can swap the belts if we needed to. Now, I have had to customize this adjustment rod a little bit. I'll put links to these down in the description below so you can pick one up on Amazon. They actually work out pretty well, and I've used this brand on a couple different projects. but I wasn't able to find the end size that we needed. So I had to drill this one out a little bit for this bolt here. And then we're also gonna have to drill this one out a little bit. I'll show you why here in just a second. So like I mentioned, I had to drill this end out a little bit so that it would fit our bolt nice and snug, but now it does exactly that. There's no play on this one, but if we take a look at this one down here, there's actually quite a bit of play on that bolt. Now we could just stack washers to tighten it up against itself, but instead we're gonna go ahead and use one of these spacers that I got. I'll also link these from Amazon. It's the perfect inside diameter for our bolt, but the outside diameter is a tiny bit bigger than we need for the heim joint. So we could throw this in the lathe, turn it down, but it's probably gonna be easier just to drill the center of that heim joint out so that this fits it snugly, and then our bolt will fit the inside, and then we'll have no play. So like I showed you guys, our little spacer doesn't quite fit inside that heim joint, so we're gonna go ahead and drill it out. Luckily, we only need to go one size up. This measures 25/64 outside diameter, and I believe this was 3/8 or close to it. So this drill bit is just barely bigger than it. And as you know, if we tried to drill this out just holding it, the heim joint itself would just be spinning inside there. So what I found is that if we clamp it pretty firmly in the vise, you don't want to crush it, but just enough to get it to stop moving easily, and then put plenty of tap magic on your drill bit, run it at a decently high speed, and it works pretty well. So let's go ahead, try it with this one, and get this spacer to fit perfectly. You want to make sure that you basically just go one size at a time. You don't want to try to step up multiple sizes, even if you need it to fit. If you just work one side at a time, it usually works out half decent. And if it does catch on you like that, go back a little bit. Get that back where you need it. Tighten it down just a little bit more. That bit was completely smoked. Let's go ahead and try this one. Perfect. See if our collar fits. If not, I can clean that up a little with a file. See if our spacer's close. Oh, perfect, guys. Nice snug fit, no play. Let's go ahead and pop this out of the vise. We'll clean that up real quick with a file, get all the chips out of the heim joint itself, and then we can test fit it. That worked perfectly. Yeah, you just gotta have a sharp bit. If you have a burnt one, you're obviously gonna be there all day, but we grabbed a fresh bit out of my bin over there, and we were good to go. All right, we've got that spacer all taken care of on here. No more play there. The only thing we got to do is get a spacer for up here, but we know what we need, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this bracket off. We'll get it cleaned up and ready for paint. Once I got the bracket back off, I went ahead and cleaned it up, got all the mill scale off, cleaned up all the edges, and got this thing looking pretty dang nice. So the next thing I'm going to do is hit it with some acetone and some wax and grease remover. Then we can hit it with some primer. We're just going to be using some Duplicolor engine primer, as well as some gloss black enamel, also from Duplicolor. So we'll go ahead and get this thing cleaned up so we can finally spray it with some color. Now that we've got our bracket all cleaned up, we can get ready to start shaking our spray paint. Get it on our Sawzall and get to shaking. So it's actually raining out right now, so we're gonna go ahead, kick our exhaust fan on and just spray it inside. So I don't have any more of that engine primer left, so we're gonna have to use some self-etch, and then when we get ready to spray it with color, I'll do a small spot on the back to make sure it doesn't react weird with the engine enamel. So let's go ahead and hit this and see what it does. So we let our primer dry for a little while. Now we're gonna go ahead and hit it with some gloss black. All right, let's let this coat tack up and then we'll hit it with another one. All right guys, let's hit this thing with our last coat. All right, let's let this thing dry. So while we're waiting for the paint to dry, let's go ahead and open up our new electric water pump that we needed. So we decided to order this from CVF. I think it's only the 35 gallon per minute flow pump, but I think for this thing being NA for now, it's gonna be fine. And once we get boost and turbo on it, we can worry about it then if it's not adequate. But for now, I think it's gonna be just fine. So let's go ahead and get this thing pulled out and take a look at it. This is the part number for the one that we decided to go with. I'll put a link down in the description below to my Amazon affiliate link so that you guys can pick one up if you need one. So let's go ahead and get this thing popped open. Got some bolts and some gaskets. Comes with a little plug. We decided to go with the black one instead of the full polished one. I just think it's gonna look better on our setup. Now I have to say, this is the first time I'm gonna run an electric water pump, so my opinion might be a little bit lean, but so far it looks like a pretty decent piece. Everything looks like it's cast or milled really nicely. The finish isn't bad. Little orange peely on parts of this, but down in here looks really good. I like the outlet to it. We might end up changing this for our particular setup, but it does come with at least this fitting, and I think it's a pretty standard thread, so we should be able to get like a 90 or something along those lines if we need something like that. But other than that, it seems to be a pretty nice piece. Like I said, it is pretty light, so that's absolutely awesome, and it's got the nice CVF stamp right on the front here, or the decal I should say. So it does come with the plug, which is nice. I have some Deutsch connectors, but I think we'll probably just end up using this since that's what it came with, but we might go ahead and repin it. So let's go ahead and take it over to the engine. We will test fit it, make sure that it's gonna fit before our bracket dries, and then we can test fit it with the alternator and go from there. All right guys, so as you've seen, we went ahead and hit our bracket with a coat of paint, and this thing came out really good. It's looking really nice and glossy. Now I think the key here was that we sprayed it out here and then I brought it inside where we had a dehumidifier running, so it made the paint dry much quicker, and I think it gave it a much nicer gloss. So in the future, we'll have to keep that in mind. Anytime we're painting something small enough that we can bring in where the dehumidifier is, we're gonna have to go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and get this thing bolted up so that we can test fit it with our new electric water pump and get the alternator on. I wish we were able to get some stainless steel bolts for it, but our local place didn't have any in stainless, so we had to go with these for grade 8. But we might have to track some down because this bracket would look phenomenal with some polished stainless steel bolts. Go ahead and set our alternator back in here. Thank you. This nice bracket makes me want to get a new alternator now just so it looks good with everything else. Which we still might if this one gives us any issue, but for mock-up, we'll go ahead and try to use this thing and see what happens. But I just wanted to mock it up real quick with the new water pump and the alternator here and just see what we're working with as far as room goes and if we're going to have to do anything with the outlet of the water pump. Guys, I think that electric water pump solved all of our issues. I don't know if you've seen before, but with the mechanical pump, the outlet was way over here and we literally could fit about a finger between the alternator and the outlet hose of the water pump. But now that we've got this CVF electric water pump on here, we have a ton of room. So I should be able to just put a 90 hose on this, go right to where we need. And we might even go ahead and make most of our cooling tubes out of aluminum and then just use straight couplers on the ends where we need to. So for the most part, this electric water pump definitely solved our problem. The next thing we need to figure out with our custom alternator location is what size belt we're gonna need. So I took a quick measurement and got us close and hopped on Amazon and ordered up a variety of different sizes. So we've got 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, and a 39-inch belt. So let's go ahead, pick one in the middle, open it up, test fit it, and work our way up and down from there. I'm gonna start off with a 36-inch belt. We'll see if we're close and then we can work up and down from there. Alright, so the 36 is a little bit on the short side. So we'll put this one back and we'll try maybe a 37 or a 38. I'm gonna go ahead and try a 37, see if we're close with that one. Ooh, this one might be the one. It's a little snug, but since we put our bracket in a custom place, we're not gonna find absolutely perfect. So let's see if it adjusts decent. Ooh. We still got to tighten the alternator, obviously. I like that a lot. It keeps our adjuster ran in very close, but still gives us enough to get the belt on and off. We can take it off there. Then, obviously, tighten it down and set it where we want it as far as belt tension goes. I like that one, guys. We'll go ahead and say that we need a 37-inch belt. So as you've seen, we've got our alternator all mounted up and ready to go, and this thing is getting extremely close to being ready to fire up for the very first time with the big block. Now, as far as the CVF electric water pump goes, I'm really curious to see how it does. I know it looks really good, and it's something that we had wanted to do since the beginning, but I just kept talking myself out of it. So once we found out that we had to do something about our coolant hose routing, I figured it was just the logical next move. We already have an electrical panel coming together for this car, and I did add a relay for an electric water pump. So everything fell into place, and I'm actually pretty happy that we decided to go that route. So all in all, really happy with how this mounting bracket came out today. Can't wait to get this thing fired up for the first time. I am extremely excited. As always, I appreciate you guys for checking out the channel. Don't forget to check us out on all of our other social media platforms, Facebook, TikTok, and Bought to Build Official on Instagram. Also, just in case you haven't seen, we did decide to open up YouTube memberships. So if that's something that interests you, or you're just looking for a way to help support the channel, make sure to go over to the page and check that out. As always, I appreciate you for sticking around to the end, and we will catch you on the next one. Bye.